Hello, I'm Matt, and I think I'm a psychic medium. I've always been interested in the paranormal and the spooky, and although I've been open to it, I've also tried to err on the skeptical side. After all, I didn't think I had had any experiences, and I certainly never thought it would have any impact on my life. But that was then. Now I want to explore where this gift will take me. In my podcast, I'll be exploring the challenges of discovering a spiritual gift, the long path of development, and how this new page of my life is affecting relationships with friends, family, and myself. So I invite you to join me as I explore my psychic and spiritual journey, as my inner skeptic and inner medium go head to head in The Psychic Explorer. Hey guys, this is now the 5th time I have tried to sit down and record this. At the end of episode 3, I wanted to reflect on some of the experiences I had when I was a child that I can now look back on and recognise there may have been an element of spookiness, supernatural, spiritual awareness, whatever you want to call it. I can look back now and recognise that same vibration I get when I do a reading today. That same vibration I recognise all the way back into my childhood. Sometimes it was something physical, sometimes it was something I could see or glimpse. Sometimes it was something I could feel, and other times it was intuition or premonition. And I'm really conscious that I don't want this episode to turn into a therapy session. However, every single time I have started telling a story, I find it such a struggle to get it out, because when I explain the context of where I was, I realised that it's something that I have buried deep within me, and talking about these things is bringing memories and feelings straight up to the surface. And it's making me question, what is the value in this? What is the value in telling you this? What is the value in bringing it all back up? But I keep coming back to it. So I've got to trust that there's some value in it. And maybe that's something you can tell me if you find this episode useful or helpful to you. That if you have been bullied or if you have some trauma in your childhood, it can really block you when you're wanting to move forward or when you're wanting to revisit other aspects of your childhood which you thought were completely unrelated. So prior warning, I apologise if what I'm about to describe, about to explain, is either not of interest to you or sounds like I'm droning on. But at the end of episode 3, I did promise you I would tell you about some of the experiences that I had. So I will do that. But I also think there needs to be context with this, because as I was recording this yesterday, I had a bit of a revelation that some of the things that I felt or some of the things that I saw, although they never troubled me as such, I now look back and realise actually that may have been someone helping, that may have been someone protecting or just looking over me. So I invite you to step back into time with me. The year is 1990. I am 6 years of age. I'm a little blonde-haired kid with big blue eyes. And I'm living in this town in the south of England with my mum and my sister on a new build council estate. But this council estate is right on the edge of town, and our house is at the very end of the row. And right next to it is more or less open countryside. There's a nature pond, there's a big mill pond, there are woodlands, there are grasslands, and running through that woodland is a railway line. And beyond that railway line is open countryside and farmland right through to the next town. Although I wasn't a fan of the town, I look back now and realise just how lucky we were to grow up in that setting. This is the era of Live and Kicking on Saturday morning TV. Once we'd finished watching that, we were out the door, and we would not be seen until it either poured down with rain or it got dark. We had friends on the street who we would go make dens with. We would play games on what we would call the pink bit, and that's where our house was. It was this sort of cul-de-sac area which was paved in a pink brick where people could park. But because back in the 1990s there were nowhere near as many cars as there are nowadays, it was almost always empty. And my sister and I and our friends, that would be our territory. That would be our place where we would play games with our friends, with our neighbours. We would constantly be out on our bikes, on our rollerblades, going up and down the streets, up and down the paths, which wound their way around the nature pond and into the woods. There was something what we called the Big Hill, and I went back a few years ago, and this Big Hill is tiny. But to 6-year-old me and to our friends, it was massive, because this tarmac path sloped ever so gently up this hill, and we would always skate down it and rush to the top of it and skate back down and rush to the top of it and skate back down it. And it wasn't huge, but to us it was. And Mum always provided a very safe house. It was full of love, full of safety, full of comfort. And I'm very aware that I'm painting a very idyllic picture here. Actually, I wasn't as happy as I'm making out. There was a lot of things bubbling under the surface. My mum and dad were amicable. There was tension there between them, but they made it work for us. We enjoyed going to see my dad. That wasn't an issue. But schooling for me was. When I first went, I think I remember my mum saying to me I was really excited to go and meet other kids. And it wasn't long before I realised that other kids didn't like me. Or at the very least, I soon became the target of a lot of other children's bullying. I know this is a common thing. Many kids, all kids, get bullied at some stage. And I hope I'm not internalising this or making it more than it was. To me, though, it felt like it was constant. I remember children in the class actively shunning me, actively blocking me out, making fun of me. If you haven't noticed already, speech for me does not come easy. I really have to think about what I say, how I say it, because I have a condition, a syndrome, where I was born with an oversized tongue, and when I was a toddler, my tongue was reduced. This means that my tongue is visibly different from other people. It also gives my voice and my speech pattern a slightly muffled and an unclear way of speaking. And my tongue drew a lot of attention from people. Couple that with a pretty camp kid as well. I mean, it was pretty obvious that I was going to turn out the way that I turned out from day one, and other kids picked up on that as well. As I'm speaking to you, I can hear these names go around in my head, the names that children called me. I can feel myself shutting down. And this is the point I get to every single version I've recorded this episode so far, and I seem to just stop. I'm going to really try and just push through and just try and get this out there, because for the life of me, I cannot do this for a sixth time. I can't do it. But the point is that life at school was not fun. I learned to become wary and afraid of other children. I did have friends at school and they were great, but for the most part, I learned that other children were to be avoided. If I wanted to protect myself, I needed to avoid other children. And it wasn't even just at school. When I was at home, when we were out playing on the pink bit or up the big hill or in the woods, there would be other children on the street who I knew I needed to stay away from. There was one child in particular who I have a vivid memory, and I'm tempted to use the word shameful, and it's not shameful, but it is how it made me feel at that time, because he was younger than me. He was younger, but he was stronger than me. And I remember skating along the tarmac path to my house, and he appeared out from behind a shrub, and he just jumped on me and he pinned me to the floor. And all he kept saying was, "You're asking for it. You're really asking for it." And for the life of me, I could not fathom what he was talking about. What had I done to him? Had I upset him? Had I offended him? Had I said something? Had someone told him that I had said something? And he was threatening to punch me. He was threatening to beat me up. And then I remember hearing adult voices from across the way. But these adult voices were not telling him to get off. They were his parents, who had pulled out fold-up chairs onto their driveway and were encouraging him to beat me up because I was asking for it. I didn't know what I had done wrong, apart from just being myself, being a little fairy kid, running around, probably pushing one of my sister's toy buggies on my rollerblades, because me, my sister and her friends were playing mummies and daddies or some other silly childlike game like that. And this kid, who again was younger yet stronger than me, had pinned me to the floor, threatening to beat me up, with his parents screaming words of encouragement. That was really painful. It was something that has always stuck with me, but I've never associated it with my life now. But actually, the more I sit with it, the more I think about it, that affected me a lot more than I ever thought it did. It probably explains why I avoid certain people. When that pebble hit the pond of my childhood, the ripples from that pebble are still radiating out and affecting my adult life now. And this is not something I really realized until I started talking about this. On Sunday evenings, my mum used to make Sunday afternoon teas, and this is so stereotypical if you are outside of the UK, but she would make cucumber sandwiches, scones, crumpets, all those sort of things. And she would put on a program called Songs of Praise, and she would love to belt out the hymns that they would sing on that. And then my mum, my sister and I would snuggle down onto the floor, and we would put our backs against the radiator so we could keep warm. And we would watch the TV from this spot on the floor next to the radiator, where we would watch BBC adaptations of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, or The Burrowers, or The House of Eliot. Those classic late 80s, early 90s BBC adaptations, which to me as a child were wondrous. Eventually bedtime would come and Mum would take us upstairs, sing us a song, read us a poem, or read us a bedtime story. And she was always so good at these because she would put on different voices for the different characters. And my sister and I would squeal and laugh, and we'd really enjoy it. But I do remember vividly, there was one or two occasions when I felt something as I turned over and went to bed. My bed was never in the middle of the room, it was always against the wall. And a couple of times when I went to bed, I would close my eyes and I could feel breathing on the back of my neck. I could feel something breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. I could almost hear it. I remember I could almost hear it. And I would face the wall and bring the duvet right up over my head so that if anything was out there, it couldn't touch me, it couldn't get me. There was no way I was going to turn around into the room and open my eyes. I had my eyes firmly shut tight. But even underneath that duvet, I could still feel that breathing in, that breathing out, that breathing in, that breathing out. And from a child point of view, it was really terrifying. It was really worrying because something was in my room. I knew something was in my room. And it shouldn't have been. In my logical brain, there should be nothing in that room. And that made it scary. But as I sit here thinking about it, it was always on a Sunday evening, the day before I went to school. The day before the bullying began again. Hey guys, it's Matt here. I know this episode is a pretty heavy one, and if anything I've said in this has affected you, feel free to reach out to me. At that time, I felt really quite alone, but that doesn't mean that you have to be. So reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, Threads, and Instagram, and you can find me at the.psychic.explorer. I will try and answer any questions that you might have, or just offer you some words of reassurance and love if that is what you need. Part 2 is not quite as heavy, so let's get into it. During the summer holidays, I started to notice that I was catching glimpses of this figure in our house. Remember, our house was a new build. It was built on old farmland. And we were the first people in that house. We were the first people to live in that house since it was built. But there was definitely a figure. I remember seeing it at the top of the stairs. I remember seeing it in the corner of the hallway. And I knew it was a woman. I remember drawing pictures of this in a Filofax notebook that I had been bought for my birthday. And I had written a backstory. The Woman in Black, I think I called her. And it never scared me, which is weird because seeing a shadowy figure in the corner of the hallway or the top of the stairs or in a room should have been petrifying. But I don't ever remember being scared. Like I said to you at the beginning of this episode, I'm not going to focus on was it real, is it not real. I'm very aware that most children have monsters under the bed or monsters in the cupboard stories. All I can tell you is that when I look back on those experiences, there is a vibration which I now recognize. And as I sit with it, I feel that this presence, whatever this thing was that I interpreted, was probably there to just look over me, to reassure me, to protect. Because I was having such a rough time with other children. Fast forward to the late 1990s, and my mother has moved me and my sister to the Isle of Wight, which is an island just off the south coast of England. For my mum, it was great because it allowed her to get onto the property ladder and further her career, which where we were living before, she had just pioneered and she was now expanding into her field. For my sister, it was fantastic because the island allowed her to extend her childhood just for a few more years and to experience the innocence of childhood longer than she probably would have if we had stayed where we were. For me, however, the island was not a happy place. This little gay kid burgeoning into a teenager. I'd come from a town which was half an hour from London and half an hour from the gay capital of Brighton. And now I was stuck on this island which, from my perspective, was stuck in the 1950s. Had very much an island mentality, them versus us, them being the mainlanders versus us being the islanders. Even though I had some friends, I still felt isolated because I was the only mainlander in my group of friends who knew what life was like on the mainland. And I seemed to be the only one that could see that, which I found really frustrating. The bullying had not subsided. If anything, it had probably got a bit worse. So I used to go to the library. I used to go to the school nurse. I remember even volunteering to look after the lost and found shed because it meant that I could just go into the shed on a lunch hour on my own and just lock it behind me. And I would spend the whole lunch break organising the lost and found because nobody would come and bother me. Our house was perched on top of a very steep hill. From our bedrooms, you could look over to the town below. You could see the cliffs. You could see the bay that stretched out into the English Channel. And like the place we lived before, it was idyllic. From the front rooms, you could look over open countryside. And from the back, you could see the sea. My sister and I would be out on our rollerblades and our skateboards and our bikes. And because the streets were so steep because we were perched on top of this huge hill, we used to do some real daredevil stunts. How we never broke a bone, I'll never know, because we did some stupid and some dangerous things. The street that we lived on, they were building new houses. The diggers had been, and they had moved tons of dirt and soil. Because the gradient of this hill was so steep, they had to dig right into the hill to dig out the foundations. The builders had piled this soil up into a really big mound. And for a boy on his bike, that mound was irresistible. I remember seeing it and thinking, oh, I wonder if I could do that. And I climbed with my bike to the top of this mound. And I got on top of it and I dangled my front wheel over the edge and I just pushed myself off. And the minute I pushed myself off, I knew it was a mistake. I thought, oh crap, I'm going to do myself an injury here because this is a lot steeper than I thought it was. There were rocks everywhere. There were boulders within the soil, hidden under the soil. There were dips where the rain had washed some of the soil away. It was a stupid mistake. I got to the bottom of that hill. My handlebars had twisted 180 degrees. I had got a puncture in one of my tires. The chain had come off fully. I'd lost the chain. Like, it was how that happens, I have no idea, but the chain had come off and was somewhere up the side of this mound. My saddle had compressed straight back into the body of the bike. It was more or less a write-off, that bike. I don't think I ever rode it again because it was so damaged. But I came out of that completely unscathed, not even a scratch. And I remember as I came down that mound, I felt something or someone, I'll say someone because I know exactly who it was, someone with me. I felt my mother's biological father, my grandfather, who I had never met. He died decades before I was born. My mum never really even met him, but I knew it was him. I just knew that my granddad was there and he had protected me somehow. I felt this steadying hand on the bike. I felt this calm. I knew I should be panicking. I knew I should be worried, but I just felt this overwhelming calm come over me. And I felt this presence just take control of my motion. And I got to the bottom and I looked to the top and I thought I should not have come out of that without at least a broken bone. I never told my mum, I never told anyone about it because I thought, oh, maybe I'm being silly. I think I just buried it. I buried it so deep because I was an odd kid anyway, and I didn't want to be any odder. The kids on the street didn't take to me. You know, when we first moved there, initially there were a couple who were nice, but over the span of a year or two, those people distanced themselves from me. So I didn't feel like it was something I could really talk about. It wasn't really something I could say. And I guess because it was my mum's dad who had died when my mum was a child, I didn't want to say anything to her either because I didn't want to upset her. Even though I knew that she was into all this stuff, there was something about it which I just held back from. I didn't talk about. And again, with the vibration, I look back now and think, yeah, recognize that feeling. The same feeling I get when I know that I'm channeling someone's mother, someone's partner, someone's sister. I just know it. I know who it is for them. That's the same feeling I had then. I knew it was my granddad. I just knew it was my granddad. And that was the last experience of my childhood. I honestly, hand on heart, can't really remember anything spooky happening to me, because then the teenage years kicked in. And what goes with the drama of teenagers and teenage relationships and the dynamics of parents and teenagers, that all kicked in and that all played out. So those were the 3 experiences I remember vividly as a child. When I reflect on more recent years, I can very much recognize how intuition has played a part of my life, how recognizing when something was or wasn't going to happen has helped me, either with a contingency plan or even just accepting that these feelings that I have had are genuine and are valid. I'm not going to go into those for this episode because I don't want to trivialize what I have said already. But suffice to say that now when I feel that vibration, when I feel that intuition, I listen to it. Even if it's not something I can do anything about, at least I know that I should maybe expect something, whatever that thing is. If you have stuck with this episode, I really want to thank you, because I know that I needed to get those stories out. And I'm very aware these stories are not jaw-dropping, they're not mesmerizing, they are very simple and subtle tales. And when people talk about ghost stories, there tends to be an element of fear with those stories. There tends to be an element of wickedness. And I would invite you that when you next hear of a tale like that, instead of reaching for the malevolent, try and think of the other side. Is your interpretation of it incorrect? Is it, in fact, a positive? Is it something or someone making their presence known to you, that you are not alone, that there is someone looking over you, there is someone breathing with you and trying to take away the anxiety and the fear that you may have of the next day? Maybe this is all psychological mumbo jumbo. Maybe it's all in my head, and that's fine. If you'd be happy for me to share some of your tales, some of your experiences, again, let me know. I'd be more than happy to use this platform to get your stories out there. Sorry if this episode has been a bit harrowing. Sorry if it's been a bit all over the place, but it's something I know that I wanted to say, but I found extremely difficult to articulate. If you listen to the raw recording of this, it's almost an hour long, and half of it is just very long pauses because I've not quite known what to say or how to say it. At least it will make the editing of this episode much easier. So every cloud and all. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to me, guys. I'll be back hopefully next week, next Wednesday, with another episode. But I will leave you with this final note that if you're anything like me, you will look back at your childhood and cringe and try and forget about it. If you are like me, try and have compassion for yourself. Have compassion for that 6-year-old child who is full of innocence, who is full of love, who is full of wonder. There is beauty in naivety, and that shell of innocence that we all had, in some cases, is shed far too early. And I would like to encourage you to try and find your 6-year-old you again. Tell them that you love them. Tell them that you care for them. And that you are so proud that 6-year-old you was innocent and naive and full of the wonders and joys of life. And try and reclaim that going forward. The world is a very tough place, and we could all do with a bit more innocence and a bit more compassion and self-love. So take care, guys. Bye. Hi guys, it's only me. Just wanted to pop in at the end of this episode because, as you would have heard, this episode touches a lot on bullying. If any of what I have said has resonated with you, if you are being bullied, or if you are a parent, guardian, or caregiver of a child being bullied, there are plenty of organisations out there, and I feel like it would be remiss of me not to highlight these organisations at the end of this episode. So if you are living in the UK, there is the National Bullying Helpline. They are open from Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and 10 a.m. to 12 noon on Saturdays. Their helpline is free to call on 0300 323 0169. That's 0300 323 0169. They can help with many aspects of bullying, from bullying within the workplace or for children who are victims of bullying themselves. Failing that, there's also Childline. They are open 24/7 and their number is 0800 1111. That's 0800 1111. I hope that helps, guys. I'm sending you all my love. Bye.